The engine starts. For a moment, you think everything is fine. The RPM jumps up, the engine catches. Maybe it even sounds normal for 1 or 2 seconds. Then the RPM drops, the engine shakes, and it dies. You try again. Same thing. It starts, then dies. Maybe it stays alive only if you press the gas pedal. Maybe it shuts off like someone turned the key back off. Maybe it runs for 5 seconds, then fades out. That small difference matters, because a car that never starts and a car that starts then dies are not the same problem. If the engine starts at all, even for 1 second, that means the engine did get enough to fire. It had enough battery power to begin. The starter turned the engine. There was at least some spark. There was at least some fuel. There was enough compression for the engine to catch. But then, right after the engine comes alive, something fails to keep it running. So the real question is not, why won't the car start? The better question is, what disappears in the first 10 seconds? That is how you solve this problem without guessing. Think of startup like a handoff. The starter gets the engine moving. The engine catches. Then the car's computer has to take control. It has to hold the idle steady. It has to keep fuel pressure stable. It has to measure the air going into the engine. It has to keep spark and fuel timed correctly. It has to trust the key and security system, and it has to adjust fast enough before the RPM drops too low. If one of those things fails during that handoff, the car starts, then dies. So let's walk through this the way a regular driver can understand it, not as a list of random parts, not as a guessing game, but as a timeline of what your car is trying to do in those first few seconds. The first clue is how it dies. Does it shut off instantly, like someone cut power? Or does it stumble, shake, and slowly fade out? Those are different clues. If the engine starts and then instantly shuts off, pay close attention to the security light, key symbol, or warning message on the dash. On many modern cars, the anti-theft system can allow the engine to start briefly, then shut it down if it does not recognize the key correctly. To the driver, this feels strange. The car is not completely dead. It starts, but it refuses to stay running. That can happen after a key problem, a weak key fob battery, a dead car battery, a jump start, a replacement key, or electrical work. Sometimes the dashboard gives the clue. A flashing security light, a key icon, a message that says key not detected, or an immobilizer warning. If you see that, do not rush to blame the fuel pump. Do not assume the starter is bad. The car may be starting, then shutting itself down because it does not trust the key. That is why the dash matters. Those lights are not just decoration. They can save you from replacing the wrong part. Now, if the engine does not shut off instantly, but instead starts, stumbles, drops RPM, and dies, think about idle control. This is one of the biggest differences in this problem. A running engine needs air. At idle, your foot is off the gas pedal. That means the car has to manage a very small amount of air by itself. If it cannot control that air, the engine may catch, then drop below a stable idle and die. A dirty throttle body can cause this. A sticking throttle plate can cause this. An idle air control problem on older vehicles can cause this. A vacuum leak can cause this. A disconnected intake hose can cause this. The clue is often your gas pedal. If the car starts and dies, but stays running when you press the gas slightly, that points toward an idle air or airflow problem. Not always, but it is a strong clue, because your foot is doing the job the car should be doing on its own. The engine can run, it just cannot hold idle. You may have noticed smaller signs before this. The RPM dipped at stoplights. The engine shook while sitting in drive. The car stalled when parking. It almost died when the AC turned on. It started, then the RPM dropped too low. Those are signs that the engine was already struggling to manage idle, and now it finally cannot keep itself alive. This is where many people replace fuel parts too quickly. But if pressing the gas pedal helps, you should not ignore the air side of the problem. The engine may not be starving for fuel. It may be choking at idle. Or it may be getting air the computer did not measure. That brings us to the next clue, air measurement. The computer has to know how much air is entering the engine. If that information is wrong, the fuel mixture can be wrong. Too much fuel and the engine can load up, run rough, and die. Too little fuel and it can stumble, lean out, and die. This is why a mass airflow sensor, MAP sensor, loose intake hose, or vacuum leak can create a start and die problem. But here is the important part. Do not make one sensor the whole story. A bad mass airflow sensor can cause this. A dirty mass airflow sensor can cause this. But so can a cracked intake boot. So can a loose clamp after an air filter change. So can a disconnected sensor plug. So can a vacuum hose that popped off. From the driver's side, you may notice the engine starts, surges, drops, and dies. Or it starts better when you press the gas. Or it runs badly after recent work near the air filter, intake tube, or throttle body. That recent work clue matters. If the problem started right after changing an air filter, cleaning the engine bay, replacing an intake hose, or unplugging a sensor, the first place to look is not the fuel pump. It is the part that was just touched. A loose air intake connection can make the car act like it has a serious problem, but sometimes the fix is simply reconnecting what came loose. Now, let's move a few seconds deeper. The engine starts. It runs for 2 or 3 seconds. Then it fades out, almost like it ran out of fuel. That can point toward fuel pressure. The engine may have enough fuel to start, but not enough to keep running. Maybe the fuel pump primes at first, but pressure drops. Maybe the pump is weak. Maybe the relay is cutting out. Maybe a fuse or wiring connection is failing. Maybe the fuel pressure regulator is not holding pressure. Maybe the injectors are not being commanded correctly. To a regular driver, this often feels like the engine starts, tries to run, then starves. It may run longer if you try several times. It may start worse when the fuel tank is low. It may stall more when the engine is warm. It may have had hesitation or power loss before the no start. But be careful here. A start and die problem does not automatically mean the fuel pump is bad. That is one of the easiest ways to waste money. The fuel pump is only part of the system. If the pump is not getting power, a new pump will not fix the real issue. If the relay is failing, the pump may not stay on. If a sensor signal is missing, the computer may not keep the injectors working. So the smarter question is not, is the fuel pump bad? The smarter question is fuel pressure staying steady after the engine starts? That question can lead to a real diagnosis. Now think about another very specific clue. Does the car start and die after filling up with gas? That pattern is important. If your car usually starts fine, but has trouble right after refueling, the evaporative emission system may be involved. One possible issue is a purge valve stuck open. In simple terms, the engine may be getting fuel vapors at the wrong time. That can make the mixture too rich during startup. The engine may crank longer. It may start rough. It may stumble. It may die unless you press the gas. This does not mean every after refuel stall is a purge valve, but the timing is too important to ignore. If the problem happens after gas station stops, tell that to the mechanic. That one detail can shorten the diagnosis a lot. Now let's talk about spark and timing signals. If the engine starts, then dies, spark may be present at first, but the signal that controls spark and fuel may drop out. The crankshaft position sensor and camshaft position sensor help the computer understand where the engine is while it is spinning. If one of those signals is unstable, the engine may start, then shut down. Sometimes these problems show up more when the engine is hot. A car may start cold, run for a while, then die. Then it cranks, starts, and dies again. After cooling down, it may start normally. That heat-related pattern is a clue. A failing sensor, relay, or electrical component can work cold, then fail hot. This is why the timing of the problem matters. Only cold, only hot, only after 10 minutes, only after sitting overnight, only after a short stop. These are not random details. They tell you where the failure may be happening. Now, what if the engine starts, but the whole car seems to lose electrical stability? The dash flickers, the screen resets, the lights dim, the gauges drop, the engine dies, and everything feels like it blinked. That points away from a simple idle problem and more toward power supply. A loose battery terminal can cause this. A weak battery connection can cause this. A bad ground can cause this. An alternator problem can cause this after the engine is running. The battery starts the car, but once the engine is running, the electrical system needs stable power. If voltage drops, the computer, fuel pump, ignition coils, and sensors can all act strange. A car may start, then die because the electronics are not staying awake properly. This is more likely if the battery light was on while driving, or if the headlights were dim with the engine running, or if electronics acted strange before the stall, or if the car died while driving and then struggled to restart. But if the engine dies within 1 second every time, and the dash shows a security light, do not jump straight to the alternator. Again, the exact behavior matters. Now let's talk about EGR, because it can confuse people. The EGR system is designed to send some exhaust gas back into the engine under certain conditions. It should not usually be wide open at idle or cold startup. If an EGR valve sticks open, it can act like a big internal vacuum leak. The engine may start, run rough, shake, and die. This is more common on some vehicles than others. A driver may notice rough idle, stalling at stops, or the engine dying when coming down to idle. But EGR is usually not the first guess for every start and die problem. It is part of the air and idle stability story. If the engine cannot breathe the right way at idle, or if exhaust gas enters when it should not, the engine may not stay running. So the clue is not just EGR bad. The clue is rough idle, stalling at idle, in a problem that feels like the engine cannot settle. Now think about the load on the engine. Sometimes a car starts and idles, but dies when you shift into drive, or when you turn the steering wheel, or when the AC turns on. That means the engine can barely hold itself alive. When extra load appears, RPM drops, and the engine stalls. That can happen with a dirty throttle body, idle control problem, vacuum leak, weak fuel pressure, or engine management issue. The important clue is that the engine runs until it is asked to do a little more. If it dies only when you put it in gear, that is different from dying instantly in park. If it dies only when AC is on, that is different from dying with no load. Again, the pattern points the way. Now let's talk about when this becomes serious. If the car only starts and dies in your driveway, it is frustrating. But if it stalls in traffic, it becomes a safety issue. When the engine dies, you can lose power assist. The steering can get heavier. The brakes may feel different after repeated presses. The car may not move when you need it to. So if the engine is stalling repeatedly, do not keep driving and hoping it fixes itself. It needs diagnosis before it leaves you stuck in a dangerous place. It is also serious if you smell strong fuel. If there is raw fuel smell, stop cranking. Let the area air out. Avoid sparks or flames. Do not keep forcing the engine to start. It is serious if the engine shakes violently, makes knocking sounds, or dies after overheating. It is serious if the problem started right after timing belt work, major engine work, or electrical repairs. And it is serious if the warning lights are telling you something specific. Security light, battery light, oil pressure light while running, temperature warning. Those clues should not be ignored. Now let's bring the whole first 10 seconds together. The engine starts. In the first second, you learn whether security may be shutting it down. If it starts and cuts off instantly, watch the key light and security warning. In the next few seconds, you learn whether idle control is failing. If it starts, drops RPM, and dies unless you press the gas, think air, throttle, idle control, or vacuum leak. If it runs for a few seconds, then fades out, think fuel pressure dropping, pump control, relay, or sensor command. If it starts rough after filling up, think fuel vapor or purge valve clues. If it runs cold but dies hot, think heat-related sensor, relay, or electrical failure. If the dash flickers or the car loses electrical power, think battery connections, grounds, charging, or power supply. If it dies when shifted into gear, think idle stability under load. That is the difference between guessing and diagnosing. You are not just saying, hey, my car starts then dies. You are watching how it dies. Instant cut, slow fade, rough stumble, start only with gas, die after refueling, die when hot, die when shifted into drive. Each one tells a different story, and that is how you avoid the wrong repair. Because this problem can make people replace a starter, even though the engine already starts. It can make people replace a fuel pump when the real issue is a security light, a vacuum leak, or a relay. It can make people replace sensors when the real issue is a loose intake hose. It can make people blame the alternator when the engine is actually dying from idle control. The repair depends on what fails after the engine catches. So before spending money, slow the problem down in your mind. The car starts. Then what happens? How long does it run? Does the RPM drop slowly or does it cut off instantly? Does pressing the gas help? Do the dash lights flicker? Is there a key symbol? Did it happen after gas? Did it happen after rain? Did it happen after repair work? Did it happen only when the engine was hot? Those questions can point you in the right direction, and they can help a mechanic diagnose the car faster. You do not have to know the exact part. You just need to describe the behavior clearly. A car that starts for 1 second and dies with a security light is not the same as a car that starts, stumbles, and dies unless you press the gas. A car that dies after refueling is not the same as a car that dies when shifted into drive. A car that loses electrical power is not the same as a car with a dirty throttle body. Same complaint, different failure. So here's the simple takeaway. If your car starts, then dies, the engine is not completely dead. It is failing during the handoff. Something that should keep it alive in the first 10 seconds is not doing its job. It could be idle air. It could be fuel pressure. It could be airflow measurement. It could be security permission. It could be a sensor signal. It could be electrical power. It could be a vacuum leak or a stuck valve affecting idle. The clue is in how the engine dies. So listen to it. Watch the RPM. Watch the dash. Notice whether your gas pedal changes the result. And avoid repeated long cranking because that can drain the battery and make the problem harder to diagnose. If this is happening to your car, comment what it does in those first few seconds. Does it start and cut off instantly? Does it only stay running with the gas pedal pressed? Does the security light flash? Does it happen after filling up with gas? Does it die when you shift into drive? Those details can tell a lot about what is failing right after startup.